Prince of Persia: Sands of Time is one of those excellent games that I played so much as a kid, I got sick of it. I hadn't touched the game in probably 15 years, so when I was scratching my head trying to figure out what game to cover next, I saw it on my shelf and thought, why not? So I suplexed the disc into that Xbox and away we went. You play as the adventure-loving, action-craving character known only as the Prince. The game begins with you and your father conquering a neighborhood kingdom in search of treasure and power. The vizier of the kingdom you conquered set up the attack, claiming to give you and your father unending riches in exchange for riches of his own. After the conquering, the gameplay begins, thus revealing the 3 Ps of Prince of Persia, if you don't count the 2 Ps in the title. Platforming, puzzles, and parkour. The bulk of what makes Prince of Persia: Sands of Time an excellent game to this day is the mixture of puzzle solving and platforming into one beautiful solution of fun. As you explore your new kingdom, you have to avoid clever traps in the walls, the floors, and the air as you work your way into the main treasure chamber. Upon finding it, you see, encased in a tomb of its own, a magical weapon known as the Dagger of Time. Some jumps and flips later, and the dagger is yours, thus falling into the vizier's trap. The newly found weapon allows the prince to reverse time if he makes mistakes, preventing him from dying. You can only reverse time as many times as you have sand slots on the side of your screen. If you're out of sand, no more time reversal, and you start from your last checkpoint. Upon returning to the throne room and finding your father admiring his new treasures and this majestic hourglass that holds what turns out to be the Sands of Time, the vizier says, "Hey buckaroo, stick that glass thing you just picked up into the hourglass. No one'll die, I promise." Trusting this absolute stranger, the prince shoves the dagger into the hourglass, causing a shockwave that kills and mummifies everyone in the entire kingdom. While fighting off the undead, having to slay your father in the process, the vizier escapes with the hourglass and you vow to get it back. That's it. That's the story. Honestly, fine. Sure, there are only like 4 story beats, but it's the perfect revenge plot. No more, no less. In fact, the development team considered more story and more characters to begin with, but decided against it after they found out it gummed up the story. Besides the prince and the vizier, there is only one other character, the daughter of the Maharaja you just took down named Farah. As you try to get back the hourglass, Farah is on her own journey to retrieve the dagger as well, and restore her kingdom to their former glory. Farah and the prince end up leaning on each other to traverse the now decrepit kingdom safely. The subplot that seems shoehorned in is this cheesy, obscenely corny love sequence. It's perfect in its inconsistency, honestly. It's with her arrival into the game that you begin to just see how extremely unlikable the prince is. He's hilariously self-centered.
I'm afraid. What if I get into trouble?
Most of the game, he just talks to himself and then yells at himself for talking to himself.
I didn't realize you meant these baths. I went to the other baths, clear across the other side of the city. I had a lovely wash and rub with fragrant oils. Too bad you weren't there. Stop talking to yourself!
It's incredible. I love it. To go from...
If you want to be useful, try finding a book that'll tell us how to get out of here.
to...
I could marry her.
And back and forth throughout the entire story feels like whiplash. With such a simple premise, gameplay has to be great to carry the load, and thankfully, it is. Actually playing the game is like looking into the inspiration of later traversal 3D platforming games like Uncharted. Most of the gameplay is platforming and using parkour to navigate the ruins of the kingdom. It's here that you realize the scope of this game and how huge it was to build such a magnificent world to move around in. While the game is pretty ugly by today's standards, the scale and thought put into the kingdom still manages to shine through. The platforming is by no means difficult, but it's also not a cupcake like Uncharted's follow the yellow brick road approach. What starts off as wall run here, jump over this, eventually fleshes itself out as ropes, ledges, balancing, and jumping challenges to hit switches are all eventually added, making it a complete experience. Here, the time reversal mechanic works really well because it allows you to experiment and make mistakes without losing a ton of time or sweat. Now, while it's all fun, you start to wonder how anyone who actually lives in this kingdom is actually supposed to do their jobs when it takes the ability to run on walls to hit some of these switches, but I digress. It's great fun, if just for the navigation, but all of the navigation leads up to my favorite part of the game, the set-piece puzzle segments. My only complaint is that there aren't enough of them. Take for instance this light bar puzzle, as I like to call it. You have to pick up these illuminated beams in the wall and move them up to their respective keyholes, but the catch is the only way to unlock the next room is to insert all the keys at the same time. You have to pick them all up at once and navigate them through this labyrinth in the wall, while also avoiding getting the other parts stuck. It's great fun and poses some of the most challenges in the game. On the polar opposite end of the spectrum, combat, while pretty satisfying at first, becomes grating way too quickly. The fluid motion and moving from one enemy to the other feels like the beta for Batman Arkham Asylum. It's incredibly seamless, but the problem is the combos you have at the beginning of the game are the same ones you have at the end. It all boils down to just mashing the X button until your enemies are knocked down, allowing you to absorb their sand for time reversal. What's even worse is that enemy variety is lacking, meaning you're only fighting the same 5-ish few enemies you had over and over again, and fighting clones of those same people as you do. It gets really grueling. Going even further is that since you only have a sword and a dagger, you can't adequately deal with flying enemies like vultures or bats. You have to wait until they attack you, and the depth perception in this game is so weird that you end up missing attacks way too often, dragging out fights while you wait for them to attack first. In a game where movement is just what makes the game fun overall, stopping and waiting on enemies to show their tells so you can attack feels really disjointed and slow. During combat, holes are poked in the time reversal mechanic too. Thanks to this weird recooling timer after you suck up sand, you can be literally caught in this awful death loop, basically making it so that as soon as you absorb sand from your enemies, your recool timer hasn't gone down, so if you take a bad hit and die, you can't actually get back up with the sand, so you just keep reversing time to the moment you got hit, and then you just die like 6 or 7 times in a row and really slow down the experience. It's pretty miserable. It's painful. And it's unnecessarily vicious. Luckily, if you're ever caught in the heat of battle, you can sometimes cheese this water fountain mechanic where you have to drink when you stock up on health.
It's clean. It's cold. And that's what I call high quality H2O.
It's a little bit weird, but you can make it work most of the time. After once more questioning if he's being tricked by Farah and falling down a literal rabbit hole,
My father's army sacked your palace, captured you as a slave.
What?
You have every reason to hate me.
What are you talking about?
we get this beautiful cutscene.
I brought this on us.
You are brave and good.
Then our two pivotal heroes who have done little speaking at all the entire game decide to do the dang thing, because what does time matter when you can control it? After the two have finally fallen in love, the natural progression is that Farah now has to die. Proving nothing of the last few hours of will they, won't they, has mattered at all. After poking the hourglass one more time, the prince travels back in time to when the kingdom was overtaken to return the dagger to Farah, who hasn't yet met him at this point. The vizier appears for one final battle. The funniest moment in my entire playthrough was after beating his first form. I imagined that he would evolve or something, but after going on this long tangent about how he's going to kill Farah and frame the prince for it, he just immediately dies in like one hit. I laughed so hard.
So it ends. How will the Maharaja feel when he finds his only daughter slain by the son of his enemy? Do you have any last words you wish me to communicate to the princess before I kill her? Words of love, perhaps?
A cool little bonus of finishing the game is that you unlock a 60-minute demo of the original Prince of Persia, but we're not going to talk about that. Prince of Persia is an excellent game even to this day, even if some of the aspects haven't aged well. I guess that proves the theme of time is really appropriate for this game. Sands of Time was the beginning point of a really successful series that came after it until it was rebooted and then killed in 2010. I guess it's true what they say. You either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself get portrayed by Jake Gyllenhaal in a terrible movie. That took like 6 takes. I'm so proud of that. But that's pretty much going to do it for this week. I know it's a little bit shorter of an episode, but I really just had a ton of fun playing the game. I eventually plan to go back to do Two Thrones and Warrior Within, obviously in order. But yeah, Prince of Persia Sands of Time really holds up. Comment down below if you ever played this game as a kid, if you enjoyed it, if you hated it, let me know. Like the video if you liked the video, pretty easy. And if you want to see more content like this, subscribe. I got a new video out every week. Next week might be a little bit different because I got a couple of things in the works for you, so stay tuned. Follow me on Twitter at under 10 hours if you're interested. But until next week, I will see y'all later. Thanks so much.